With Mitski, I felt like I did connect around the care about writing. As somebody who struggles sometimes with productivity and with doing the work I want to do, I was inspired by her kind of single-mindedness. I think she is going to be one of the musicians we, are listening to years, decades from now. I really do. There's this lyric, if you would let me give you pinky promise kisses, then I wouldn't have to scream your name atop every roof in the city of my heart. It has just the slight weirdness and offness. It's a little icky somehow. But then it's the contrast with scream your name from every roof in the city of my heart is so passionate and beautiful and sad. It feels so ungeneric. It feels so both identifiable and yet peculiar and particular. It's always interesting just to see what's possible in sort of the idiom of indie pop music. People sometimes do new and interesting things with it, and bold things. And Mitski is one of those people. Mitski is an indie musician who is 28 years old and is Japanese American. Her mom is Japanese, her dad is American. Because of her father's work, they moved constantly. So she lived in Japan, she lived in Malaysia, she lived in the Czech Republic, she lived in Turkey, did a stint in Virginia. Moving every year, she had this permanent sense of dislocation and I think alienation, always of being the new kid, always of being the foreigner. And I think that is an important theme in her writing and her music. I was kind of fascinated by her just because I think she is such a remarkable singular talent. But she's a young woman and a young Asian American woman, which is a little unusual in the indie world. And she is carving out this path for herself. I'm not her demographic. I'm in my 50s. Most of her fandom is quite young. I follow music closely. I love music, but I also have a 19-year-old daughter and a 22-year-old son, and they brought Mitski to my attention first. So we were actually on a family road trip last summer, and my son's girlfriend brought out Geyser. I was really taken with that song at that moment. It's about dealing with a force, a powerful force in your life, and when you first hear it, it sounds like it's about love or perhaps a rejecting love object. But it turns out, and I think this is very revealing in a way about Mitski and how she thinks, it's about music. Part of what makes her music unique is that she has an unusual background. She studied composition at a music conservatory, so she's very devoted to words and melody for voice. Melodically, she just goes to some interesting places.
Venus, planet of love, was destroyed by global warming. Did its people want too much too?
She describes having had a pretty reckless, self-destructive passage through her teenage years. Once she came home from a party late at night, dawn was coming up, and feeling like she'd had a wreck of a night. She liked to sing, but there were no songs out there that kind of expressed what she was feeling. She had a little keyboard in her room, realizing that she could write music, and played the song, which was called Bag of Bones and ended up on her first album. It was just a huge emotional breakthrough for her, making her feel, honestly, that her life was worth living. The first song I ever heard was Your Best American Girl. It had this power to it, it had this wildness to it, and it intrigued me about her, this young woman singing with this passion and force.
If I could, I'd be your little spoon.
The video has Mitski making doe eyes at this pretty boy crush object. They're kind of looking at each other longingly, and then this blonde comes out, and they start making out, and it's obvious that he's taken. It's this feeling of loneliness and rejection. Then there's this weird section in her kind of lonely suffering. It has Mitski make out with her own hand. Then there's like a great kind of moment of revenge. She basically just takes out her guitar and shreds and is triumphant and has found her satisfaction in music.
What is the message you're trying to get out with Be the Cowboy? What are you trying to get people to do?
Well, when I say cowboy, I literally mean like the cowboy myth. The idea of a man riding into town, wrecking shit, and then walking out like he's the hero. There's such an arrogance and a freedom to it.
Right.
That is so appealing to me, especially because I'm an Asian woman. I walk into a room and feel like I have to apologize for existing. This album, I think its protagonist is someone like me.
Right.
Who feels like they want to channel or embody that energy of a cowboy.
Mitski has a kind of a big queer following, and following of people who just generally, I think, identify a little bit as outsiders. Anybody maybe who feels that they have a secret life that the world doesn't understand or recognize. She is particularly good at channeling that kind of identity. One of the themes of her music generally is dislocation. It's a kind of paradoxical move because it's sort of trying to connect to other people around your loneliness and theirs.
Everyone felt a hurt in their heart just now.
In terms of this celebrity that she's enjoying, she thinks of it as a necessary trade-off. She really wants to make music. She really wants her lyrics to be heard, and she knows that in order to do that, you have to tour and you have to have a public presence. By crafting your art and being perfectionistic about it and crafting your persona, it's a way of exerting control over emotional chaos and having power in the world. Often, people have this idea still, especially with a young woman songwriter. Journalistic representations of her focus on almost this manic pixie dream girl kind of image, having a wild time and going vintage shopping all day, and then comes home and maybe writes a song at night but without much thought.
It's so gendered, you know? I don't think I would get as many critiques where people say my music is confessional or raw if I wasn't who I am.
She says, you know, I work all the time. So it's like, if you want to see what I'm doing, come to my shows, come to my rehearsals, because that's kind of who I am.